Welcome to the first ever episode of the Cannabis Corner. Thank you for tuning in. We're starting out 2022 with spreading as much information about the cannabis plant as we can, and I have about 13 topics that I want to discuss today, so I'm going to jump right into it. So we're starting out with the news of Montana commencing adult use sales of cannabis as of January 1st. So that first weekend, they generated over $1.5 million in sales, which equated to over $300,000 in tax revenue. So this is just great to see. There's currently 18 states that have adult use legalization in place. Not all those states have commenced operations, so it's great to see Montana figure it out and get everything in place and actually start sales. Speaking of states that I think are going to pass medical and adult use legalization next, I do think Kentucky is going to pass medical in 2022, despite the headline of this article. GOP Kentucky senator who sells bourbon invites voters to unseat him over medical cannabis opposition. That state senator is Damon Thayer. He owns a bourbon company called Kentucky Senator. It's a whiskey distillery in Kentucky. And despite bipartisan support and polling showing the people of Kentucky want medical cannabis, he's saying he's not going to vote for it because it's a Trojan horse for adult use sales. Adult use sales do typically follow closely behind medical, but he's seeing that alcohol consumption goes down in those states that have adult use sales, and he wants his bourbon company to do well. So I think that's the only reason that he's going to vote no. So I really hope he gets unseated. And it's funny because the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, was quoted last year saying that he wants to legalize medical cannabis and sell it to other states. Which is illegal. There's no interstate commerce for cannabis right now, although there are apparently politicians working on that. Kentucky's got to go one step at a time, and I do think that they will pass medical in 2020. This is one that I just wanted to quickly talk about, but Illinois sets cannabis sales record in December with nearly 1.4 billion sold in all of 2021. And so that is more than doubling their sales from 2020, the year that they commenced adult use sales. And this 1.4 billion generated almost $400 million in tax revenue. Illinois is also surrounded by states that have not legalized, and almost $500 million of those sales in 2021 came from those out-of-state residents. So message to all those states, you should probably figure out your cannabis laws because you're missing out on hundreds of millions of dollars of tax revenue. So in the least surprising news ever, cannabis decriminalization reduces arrests and racial disparities in law enforcement. So it's clear that minorities have been persecuted more heavily since the beginning of the war on drugs. And so it's interesting to see this research coming out to provide data for these politicians and people to make educated decisions on what to do with their drug policy, essentially. And so there was a study from that was published by the American Medical Association from 2008 to 2019. States that legalized cannabis saw 561 fewer arrests per 100,000 black people and 195 fewer arrests for white people on average over that time period. Decriminalization, meanwhile, was associated with roughly 449 fewer arrests per 100,000 black people and a drop of 117 for white people. So states that don't want medical or adult use cannabis, something that they can still do is just decriminalize the plant. It's going to reduce some of those racial disparities. I'm not saying that this is going to completely eliminate all racial disparities in law enforcement, but this is clear that it will have an impact. So I am a huge supporter of, hey, if your people in your state don't want medical or adult use, fine, but at least decriminalize it because it's going to have a positive impact. This piece of news was surprising to me. I actually saw it on LinkedIn before I saw it on this website. But federal cannabis monopoly finally ends as 2 companies harvest cannabis approved by the DEA. So historically, there had only been 1 facility in the whole country that could grow cannabis for the federal government for research purposes. It was at University of Mississippi. And so the DEA has granted approval to 2 new manufacturers, they're calling them, for cultivating cannabis for research purposes. So it's Groff North America and Biopharmaceutical Research Company. So this is good because this is essentially just going to increase the supply of cannabis for research purposes. Any Schedule I drug, cannabis is on that list, MDMA, LSD, psilocybin, all of these things have clear medical benefits. There's been studies, but for some reason, they're still Schedule I substances, which make them incredibly difficult to do federal research into. And so this is a step in the right direction, increasing that supply. There seems to be momentum from the government in wanting to make it easier to do research into Schedule I drugs. I think by 2030, the list of Schedule I drugs, the ones I just mentioned, MDMA, LSD, psilocybin, cannabis, I think all of those get removed from Schedule I by 2030. It's 8 years away. I would love to see it happen sooner. But regardless, this is definitely a step in the right direction. Some other positive news coming out of the government. The FDA signs off on human CBD trials to treat opioid addiction. And so Ananda Scientific's drug, Nanthia ATL5, it's a liquid capsule with 100 milligrams of CBD. There's currently one other CBD drug approved by the FDA. It's called Epidiolex, and it's used to treat seizures. Currently, fentanyl overdoses in the United States are the leading cause of death for people aged 18 to 45. I don't know why that's not talked about more. If CBD can provide some sort of benefit there and reduce that number, I'm all about it. I'd like to see the government actually doing studies into cannabis and the benefits that it can provide medicinally. What's kind of weird is at the same time, like I just said, cannabis is a Schedule I drug, which is reserved for substances with no medicinal benefit. So to have an existing drug on the market, Epidiolex, that's all it is CBD, and then to still say cannabis has no medicinal benefit, it seems really contradictory to me. But at the end of the day, Big Pharma is not the most stand-up group of companies, I guess you could say. So regardless, I would love to see CBD be proven scientifically to have benefits for opioid addiction, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out of this study. So I'll quickly go over this topic because this is kind of a trending topic in the cannabis industry right now, but a loophole in federal cannabis law has led to the creation of a new THC product. That new THC product is Delta 8. Typically, if you go to a dispensary and you're consuming cannabis, it has Delta 9 THC in it. THC is one of the main compounds that gives you that psychoactive feeling. But people are actually able to extract Delta 8 from plants that are considered to be hemp with less than 0.3% THC. The way the laws were written, the government said, if you have more than 0.3% Delta 9 THC, then this is still a controlled substance. If it has less than 0.3% Delta 9, it's not controlled. They completely left out Delta 8. This was not, something that was on anyone's radar in the government at the time of writing these laws. And so these products are blowing up in states with no medical or adult use regulation right now because you literally get high off of it. So like a Delta 8 vape or gummy is going to give you a kind of a similar feeling to like a Delta 9 vape or a gummy. So this part of the market is the most gray area that you could be. There's no regulation on it. I would suggest staying away from these products. Don't buy hemp or cannabis products from a gas station. It's a good rule typically. This topic deserves a video of its own, but I'll quickly just kind of put out a word of warning. I would not recommend consuming Delta 8 products. I think this was my favorite news from the week, but a company buys Vermont grain building for hemp processing. So this company, Zion Growers, based in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, has bought an old grain mill, and they're saying they're going to turn it into an industrial hemp processing facility. So I was under the impression that there wasn't enough space in New England to have considerable industrial hemp being grown, so therefore there would not be need for an industrial hemp processing facility. Processing for industrial hemp is going to be regionalized around the country, but I thought New York and Pennsylvania were going to be the closest to me. I'm in Massachusetts. And Vermont has typically been known as like a craft state, whether it's beer, cheese, maple syrup, and industrial hemp is very much not really a craft thing. It's like you need hundreds, thousands of acres to grow it and to process the fiber or grain to make it profitable. But, the guys at Zion Growers, they've obviously talked to farmers. They know that people are going to be growing industrial hemp in Vermont. So I am really excited to see where this goes, and I'm going to be following this closely. This next segment here is about Bear Fiber. Big shout out to them and Guy Carpenter, their president. They have produced the first fully United States-based hemp textile. So the fiber was grown here, it was processed, it was spun, knit, and finished all in the United States. So like for my clothing company, we import our fabric from China and the rest of the supply chain occurs here in the United States because as of right now, China's making the best hemp fabric. I don't want to be buying my fabric from China, but it's the best product. I can't wait for this to be at scale where we can implement this into yesterday because it's all about, returning the hemp industry to the United States, and Bear Fiber and Guy Carpenter are really leading the charge when it comes to this. So big shout out to them. This was an interesting article to me because it's like Web3 meets hemp industry here. Hemp grower crowdfunds court case, tokenizes shares in settlement. So what's known as an initial litigation offering, this company Apotheo is suing Kern County, California for bulldozing like 450 acres of their hemp crop. And so the money that they raised is being issued to the investors as digital tokens on the Avalanche network as a proof of investment. So it allows them to speculate on the court case result. So if they think it's going to be a positive result, they could even buy more tokens. Or if people are pessimistic, they think Apotheo is going to lose the case, they could sell those tokens on the open network. Just super interesting. Things like this are going to become more commonplace. So for this segment, Hemp Industry Daily put together some insiders and asked them what they think about 2022. And they say that they predict a dim 2022. I don't necessarily get those vibes from reading all of this, but I get kind of optimistic vibes from reading all this. But Palak Sharma thinks we're going to see a crackdown on Delta 8 THC. Definitely agree with him there. Fabiola thinks we're going to start leaning more towards utilizing hemp fiber in textiles, which I would love to see. Zev Pais is talking about hemp building materials and he thinks that 2022 is going to kind of usher in the start of hemp building, which there are already a handful of US companies kind of leading the way there. So I think that's definitely just going to keep growing. Patrick here is going industrial hemp as well, fashion, fabrics, fiber, fuel, farming. We're moving away from the CBD craze. After the 2018 Farm Bill, everyone was trying to grow hemp for CBD. All those farmers kind of got burned, not all of them, but a lot of them. And so we're seeing industrial hemp be the focus, which is very positive in my opinion. Frederick here, I actually had the pleasure of hearing him speak in Asheville at the Southern Hemp Expo a few months ago. And he's talking about NFTs and how brands are going to incorporate NFTs in their business model. I completely agree here. I think there's a lot of room for brands to capture more loyal communities through Web3 and tokenizing different things that give their community deeper access to the brand and to be more a part of the brand, really. And I think NFTs kind of unlock a lot of that. Just quick thing, if you think NFTs in Web3 is bad for the environment or it's all a scam, I highly encourage you to do more research, not just read headlines. This stuff is the future. Web 1 was the internet. Web 2 is social media. Web 3 is NFT and blockchain technology. Don't pass up the opportunity, I guess, is to learn more about it, is what I'll say. And this last one, Julie Lerner, is this was interesting to me because she's saying industrial hemp product demand is going to outpace the supply of the material. So eventually the laws of economics will balance out there and the supply will rise to meet the demand. So I look forward to the day that happens. Last but not least here, I just wanted to say rest in peace to Steve LeVine, who's a hemp advocate OG who passed away on January 1st. He was the former president of the Hemp Industry Association for 10 years. And in 2009, he and 5 other people got arrested for planting hemp seeds on the front lawn of the DEA headquarters. So Steve just did a lot to get the hemp industry to be where it is today. So rest in peace to Steve. Big shout out to everything that he did to get us where we are today. That was episode 1 of the Cannabis Corner. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, thank you for sticking around to the end. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to be notified for the next episode next Sunday. And please let me know what you think of this. Give me some feedback. Trying to learn and improve every episode.